Hello, everybody, and welcome to the March 10th Trips and Traps. I'm Andy Serling. He's Richard Migliori.
Short but sweet trips and traps today, but I think interesting, and I think we're making something almost out of nothing, but that we're just good points to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that the rail was good all weekend. And there were obviously only 3 days last weekend with some weather on Thursday, particularly on Sunday. And we're going to start with the Gotham, but then show a two-turn race on Sunday, and their efforts in contrast. And I like that they're two very different races. And I know that the Gotham was the kind of race, we go to the break, Richie and I like because there was some good aggressive riding at the start, and it really set the table for the race.
No doubt. And the most aggressive was Trevor McCarthy on El Arib. And you can see he comes out running like he wants to kind of dictate the flow of the race. But the problem is he's got True Timber with Kendrick Carmouche, another aggressive rider, right lap to his outside. You know Kendrick's not going to just give it to you.
He's not, and Kendrick had a mission. He wanted to go out there too, and a very good ride by Manny Franco on Cloud Computing because he's been very aggressive lately, and he was able to get his position going forward. And as we talked about before the race, and there's Cloud Computing settling in there. There's El Arib under pressure, and here's J-Boy Zecco who's getting a perfect trip. And because J-Boy Zecco had the rail this time, which he is supposed to post 10 last time, the trip fell in his lap.
Well, he didn't have to use him at all. Just let him run straight into the turn because you're on the rail. And they went quick enough where now he finds that perfect gap. He doesn't have anybody around him. There's nothing to bother his horse, no body contact. He's just galloping in that spot. I agree with you, though. Cloud Computing, Manny Franco, going forward, finding that gap, that separation, and ducking in. And I heard some people say, well, he was a little close. Yes, but the post position forced his hand.
I agree. He had to do something. He had to make a decisive decision to get that position. Now, if you want to split hairs, maybe he should have let him settle a little bit and drop a little bit off. But you can't have it both ways.
Right, exactly. He made a decision. He went with it. And then also sometimes when you're on a young horse that hasn't raced a lot, this is his horse's only second start, you worry that if you let him drop out of it too much, he's not going to pick the bit back up.
Well, I tell you, Cloud Computing ran a tremendous race when you considering he was in the key of the battle, and he finished over 7 lengths ahead of El Arib, who clearly, had pressure but didn't run that well in here. J-Boy Zecco just got the perfect trip. But I'll tell you something, I think both the first two finishers are very promising for you all.
Oh, I do too. I think J-Boy Zecco really stamped himself as a legitimate Derby-type horse. He's a small horse, but he's extremely handy, tractable. He fell into a perfect trip, yes, but he's the kind of horse that helped create his own trip. Cloud Computing, my question to you, and I think Cloud Computing is nothing short of a potential superstar.
I agree with you.
Right? If he has post one, do you think maybe the finish is different?
It's not impossible, especially if J-Boy Zecco draws outside again.
Right.
It's very close because what I loved about Cloud Computing was how he continued to fight him to the wire.
Yeah.
It's not like he ever gave up. I have another question for you. Dale Rome is going to do the right thing with J-Boy Zecco as far as run him in the bluegrass. If he wins the bluegrass, great, but he's looking as a prep to the Derby.
Sure.
Now, they may do the same thing with Cloud Computing. He got 20 points in here. He's well on his way to the Derby if they want to go there. Horses like Cloud Computing never win the Derby. He broke his maiden the first week in February, went from 6 to this race in 3 weeks. Now he can run in the wood or wherever he runs and probably get in the Derby. What would you do if you're your horse?
If Cloud Computing's my horse, I would make him a second half of the year kind of horse. It's packing too much in a short period of time, and the thing that he doesn't have is the foundation to build off of it. 2-year-old racing, even if they're not real successful 2-year-olds, they have the training and those miles underneath them. Him starting as a 3-year-old, now this, and now he's going to jump into the next thing, and the Derby would be his 4th start. You're packing a lot in a short period of time. If he could do it, listen, he ran better in the Gotham than I thought he might.
He ran great.
Because he's a really good horse. But if they would focus on the Travers, he'd be my Travers horse right now.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you say is, and it's hard when you have these horses because you get one shot at the Derby.
No doubt, and I understand
If you felt you could run, and I don't disagree with you, by the way, and I think it's a very interesting debate and discussion. If you felt like, well, I could run him the wood in the Derby, and if he runs 8th in the Derby, I'm ready to stop on him and wait for the blue Jim Dandy and go Jim Dandy Travers. Mm-hmm. That's what you have to be ready to do. You have to be ready to stick to that plan, and maybe that'll work. The question is, do you think it'll have an adverse effect on him? I don't know that it does or not.
Well, I think every horse is different. This horse looks like he has a really good mind. I mean, you watch him in the post-grade, you watch him do things. He's really smart. He's got a great constitution. I just wonder if it wouldn't beat him up a little bit physically. I understand. Listen, it's only one Derby.
It's tough.
I do, but In a perfect world, if it was my horse and I had the decisions to make, I would like to believe, I would say, you know what, he's really good. We'll get them in the second half of the year.
I don't disagree about all that. I mean, I say one thing, whatever happens with him, this horse, he might be the early favorite for the Travers at this point.
Yeah.
We'll talk about a race on Sunday, the 5th race on Sunday, and the track was extremely tilted to the inside, and Bunyan was unlucky. Now, a couple things happened. Super Psyche breaks like a shot. He's the 2, and Manny Franco has a plan. The 4 Wingman, who's supposed to be the speed, breaks a little bit slow, and compounded with the 2 breaking so sharply, he's behind the 8 ball. Bunyan breaks okay, but he's all the way on the outside. I don't think there's anything Kendrick could have done with the 4, and he tucked him in the pocket. I wish that Bunyan had been more aggressive. Imagine this race compared to the Gotham, Richie, and the Gotham created separation. Because you can say, well, I don't want to use Bunyan too much, but he ends up stalking a slow pace 3 wide. The field bunches up. He never gets near the inside. At the end of the day, Bunyan is outside. The 4 is inside. Bunyan did not have a chance to win this race, even though he lost by only a head. And I think a more aggressive rider wins.
I agree with you.
And I needed the 4. No sour grapes by me. You needed the 8.
No, I needed the 8 and or the 4. Those were the 2
But
that
I mean, and I didn't need the 8 to win any money, and I just think it was an under-aggressive ride.
Well, and here's the proof of that. They went a half in 50.
Right.
And now you're chasing wide the entire way a half in 50. Wouldn't you have been better off going 49 and maybe making the lead and being on the rail? I mean, basically, you're expending as much energy chasing wide as you would if you went ahead and made the pace.
And it's just a situation of you compare it to the Gotham. Okay, the Gotham is a $300,000 Derby prep. All of these races are important races. They're important to the connections. They're certainly important to the bettors. And every time you ride, you want to give yourself your best chance. Well, now he's in a full-out drive with Bunyan on the 8. And to me, it's just like too late, too little, too late. And even though he loses by a head, this horse was an hour the best.
Well, and once again, here's the proof of the pudding. That's 4 wide right here. He was at least 3 to 4 wide on both turns. We talk about it all the time. I say, if you're going to lose ground on one turn, you've got to save every inch on the other, unless you're so much the best. And he almost was best anyway. The horse on the lead, Super Psych, just did outgame him, but he was on the inside the whole way, setting a slow pace.
And it was a strong inside. So not only do you have the ground loss, the situation you're talking about, but you also have the bias in your favor. I think that Wingman was unhappy rating behind horses. He didn't have a bad trip after the break. He saved ground, all this thing. I just wonder if his best chance would have been to clear the lead, where he could have got comfortable in the front end.
Yeah, it's too bad that he broke a little bit flat-footed.
And the 2 broke so well.
And he broke so well. And then he got buffeted about in between, and that kind of slows the horse's forward momentum down. And you could see Kendrick's mind, where he wanted to be. He just couldn't quite get there, and then he had to go to plan B and tuck in. And it just seemed to me at one point around the turn, and again, no fault of Kendrick, you're in the pocket, the horse really wanted to run, and there was no place to let him run, and then he went a little stale, and then he found his stride again late.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. There was never a situation where he should have beaten Bunyan regardless. So I have no sour grapes because I needed him.
Sure.
But his trip didn't really work out. It's interesting to watch the 2 races, and I think in one race, people gave their horses their best chance to win, whereas in the other race, they allowed themselves to be victims.
Well, I think the common denominator here was Manny Franco gave Cloud Computing every chance, albeit had to use him a bit, but because that was the post position and he had to deal with the hand dealt him. And then he had the inside with Super Psyche, and he went. And
a horse who's not a speed horse, by the way.
No, and his aggression paid off.
Absolutely, and a sharp break helped. Once again, we can always use your help. It's trips and traps at NYRInc.com.